get to the end of the protocol, and normally it's pretty strained. By the time we got to the end of the last protocol, it was pretty much disintegrated.
Inevitably, with these kind of negotiations, you have a few moments where people are holding their breath.
It's a higher top-end speed.
Fly off down the harbour at 50 knots in a hydrogen boat.
And of course, that may well be an opportunity for our team specifically.
But this relationship between us and India is actually stronger than it was when we started.
An important day.
It's the middle of November, the nights have closed in up here, and it's difficult to believe that it was a year ago that I headed down to Auckland to report on the America's Cup. And what a gig that was. But as they say, a lot of water has passed under the bridge since then. And now it's time to find out what's in store for the next America's Cup. Because now the protocol has been published. The results of months of negotiation between the defenders, the Kiwis, and the challengers, the Brits. It's a process that can sometimes end in tears, but this time it sounds like both sides have plenty of common ground, along with some exciting ideas for a cup that's due to take place in 2024. Ben Ainslie sets the scene.
So today we announced the protocol for America's Cup 37, along with Emirates Team New Zealand, who of course are the defender of the America's Cup. And how it works, ultimately you need a defender and a challenger of record to come together to cut a deal effectively, to set the rules and regulations for the event. So we've done that over the last 8 months. It's been, I have to say, it's been a really collaborative process. Inevitably with these kind of negotiations, you have a few moments where people are holding their breath, but a lot of respect between the two teams, two organisations, and I think both teams are really excited with the protocol that we've come up with. You know, it's bold, it's progressive. You know, there's some new classes of boats, the AC40 that's coming in to have a youth America's Cup and a women's America's Cup. I think in particular is showing a great pathway for the future of the America's Cup. So an important day.
So what are these new boats? Team New Zealand designer Dan Bernasconi, who was one of the key architects of the AC75 class last time around, explains.
So whilst Dolts and Ben have been working on the protocol, we've been developing the class rule in conjunction with INEOS. And the class rule is really an evolution of the AC75 class, which we developed in the previous Cup, and it's a real step up for the AC75s. We're making the boats lighter, fewer crew, bigger span foils, and all that together is going to make a much more exciting boat. It's a higher top-end speed and a lot better in the light air, so we'll be able to get up on the foils in lighter breeze, and it's just a real generation 2 of the AC75s. Whilst we've been developing the class rule for the AC75, at the same time we've been developing this AC40 class, which is a really exciting class. It's a 4-person boat that all teams will be racing in preliminary regattas, but will also then form the class of boat which is used in the Youth America's Cup and the Women's America's Cup. We're also going to be using that cup internally for match race training within our team and for development testing. So we can swap out foils for new foils, put development prototype sails on, and so on. So it's a multi-purpose boat, and it's been really exciting developing that.
As Chief Technical Director of Mercedes F1 team, James Allison brings a fresh pair of eyes and a stack of experience to Ineos Britannia, and is already looking at some of the potential gains in the new rules.
This new generation of AC75s are going to be a lot lighter than the ones that preceded them, something like a ton of weight coming out of the vessel. That was an objective to allow the boats to operate more effectively in very light airs, allow the boat to take off when the wind isn't blowing too strongly. One of the ways in which the weight was taken out of the boat was reducing the crew from 11 to 8 people. Reducing the crew means reducing the ability to generate hydraulic power, all those people pumping away at the grinders trying to make the hydraulic power. And so one of the ways that the class rule has tried to compensate for that is bringing back the opportunity to generate hydraulic power, not just with your arms, but if you wish to, with bicycles, with the so-called cyclers. And so every team will have to assess whether they wish to go traditionally, that styly for generating that power, or to do it with a bicycle style pump. And of course that may well be an opportunity for our team specifically, because we are linked to the Ineos Grenadiers, the cycling team. So we'll be going there for some hints and tips on how to condition our athletes, and maybe, who knows, some athletes too. But it's certainly going to be an interesting technical avenue.
Creating opportunities and diversity within the Cup world has been talked about on and off for a while. Bermuda saw a Youth America's Cup in 2017, and now that programme's back, along with the Women's America's Cup. Ben Ainslie explains.
I think both the youth and the women's programme are key for the Cup moving forwards, and we've seen in a lot of sports trying to increase diversity, inclusion. This will be the first ever Women's America's Cup, which, you know, to give the opportunity where it hasn't been before, I think is a great initiative, and the Cup should be applauded for driving that. And for the youngsters, we've had a Youth America's Cup before with great success. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the youngsters down to Auckland for the last Cup, but it's back with a vengeance for this next Cup. And we've seen a lot of the current crop of top America's Cup sailors like Neil Hunters, Pete Burling, Blair Tuke, come out of the Youth America's Cup and then be stars of the future. And so, yeah, to have those younger sailors, to have the women competing at this highest level, I think that's fantastic for the sport of sailing.
This protocol is not just about sailing. The new rules say that teams have to have foiling hydrogen chase boats.
That in itself doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's a really big deal. Hydrogen's been around a little while, but it seems to be the future within the marine industry, and when we launch that in February next year and fly off down the harbour at 50 knots in a hydrogen boat, that's a game changer within the marine industry.
But for all the high-tech talk, there was one key detail that was missing: the venue. Why?
When we set the date after the Cup of a venue by September the 17th, that was too ambitious, and it's pretty obvious now to us. But it's had the effect also of sort of sharpening everybody's attention, and it really goes on 24 hours a day trying to get the venue sorted out. Auckland isn't out of the mix, but it's not that likely, and it's certainly not helped by the narrative that Mark Dumfries runs when he effectively knows the numbers and, for his own ends or whatever his motivation, portrays them incorrectly to the public. So that doesn't help the Auckland situation. It gives Kiwis a false view of how it is here. But we're working on that as hard as we can, and we'll announce it as soon as we can.
The lack of a venue is a topic that'll doubtless fire up a heap of debate. The new deadline for the announcement is the 31st of March 2022. This delay puts challenger design teams on hold, and given that time is always an issue in a Cup campaign, this must surely put them at a disadvantage. Interestingly, when I asked Grant Dalton about this, he said that because the boats fly above the water and operate across a big wind range, the venue was less of an issue than it might have been before. Also, he said that at this stage, most teams would be building the tools and not the boat. I put this to Ben, and while he agreed in part, he did make the point that not knowing the venue risked interfering with the design schedule. Was that a hint of some friction? Who knows? But Cup history tells us that it doesn't take much to start a bust-up. Now, no one wants it, especially with such exciting plans ahead to move the boats onto the next generation. At the moment, both sides seem to be working well together and definitely moving the game on. And according to Dalton, that's an improvement on where they've been before.
You know, you get to the end of the protocol and normally it's pretty strained. By the time we got to the end of the last protocol, it was pretty much disintegrating. But this relationship between us and Ineos is actually stronger than it was when we started. That can only be good to what happens next. But in releasing it 8 months afterwards, it says entries open in 2 weeks, game on, the Cup's going to be in 2024. We've got to find the venue yet, and I can assure you that we're working on that round the clock to get that done.
So with the protocol out, we know a lot more about how the next Cup will shape up. Next year we'll see the first of the new AC40s afloat, but it doesn't sound like we'll see any racing until 2023. And when it comes to the Cup match itself, you still can't book your flights just yet.